Hi, I'm Sandy from Sandy Creates Cards and More, and I am an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator. We're having a beautiful snowy day here in southern Vermont, about 8 inches so far, but thankfully it seems to be slowing down. So I picked this card because of the snow we're having outside. This card uses one of the snowmen, the skating snowman, from the Spirited Snowman set. I'm using the stamp, this tree from Lovely as a Tree, and Peaceful Noel. I'll be using one of these two sentiments. I've used both of them on this card. This is an A7 size card, so for that you're going to need a 5x7 card base, the folded size, a piece of shaded spruce for the bottom mat. 4 3/4 by 6 3/4, and the Whisper white top mat is 4 1/2 by 6 1/2. You're also going to need a scrap of just any cardstock that you have to make a mask, and we use that to separate our colors of ink so that we don't get one on top of the other. I've got a new one this morning. I've used 2 different masks when I've been making this card. And when I cut them apart, I actually label them so that if I'm making, if I'm coloring this side of the card, I use this piece. But then when I want to do the bottom of the card, I have to set this piece in place. And on this particular card, I've used the center, I left white, and I've covered that with Dazzling Diamonds, and I think we're going to try that as well today. Let's set these over to the side. We need them. For inks, I've stamped the snowman using the archival basic black from Stampin' Up. It works well with watercolor paints. I don't think it's available anymore, so you can use Memento ink. Try that out, or you could use the Stays-On ink that's available in the catalog. And then for those backgrounds, I've got Balmy Blue and Pool Party. And for the trees, I've stamped them 2 generations, first and second generation stamping, using shaded spruce. Remember, you can always switch out your cardstock colors, ink colors, or even your stamp sets to something similar that you may have at home if you don't have all of these particular colors, sentiments, etc. So let's begin. I have pre-stamped my snowman on here. And I've done that because the first card that I made, when I was sponging the background, I had some smearing. So I wanted to make sure that this was nice and dry. And another thing that we need to do before we start sponging is you need to make a mask now to cover that snowman. I use this Post-it labeling tape. It's quite wide. It's about 2 inches wide. And I'll stamp right on that. And then just cut it out. I'm going to lay this mask down to cover our snowman. So when I trim this to size, I cut off this. I didn't want to trim around that. I have cut off the fringe on the scarf. And I've cut off these pieces because those are things that will be colored in. And so even if we get some ink on it, it's not going to matter. I think I'm going to begin by coloring the bottom of the card, which is sort of the pond section. So the nice thing about these is that you can adjust them. And I think That'll give me about what I want right there. I tape this actually to my grid paper here. A little bit onto the card, though you don't want to push that down too tight. And so for the bottom of the card, I'm using the Pool Party ink. Set that aside also. And get some of the stuff off the top of my mat here. Right there. So I always kind of work some in onto the, get it onto the sponge. I really want this just very faint. So I'm removing most of it from the end of the sponge. Careful around the little pieces. And again, just a light coating at a time. You can always put more. You don't want it too dark. I'm always going back to make sure I'm getting a nice crisp line right around where the mask is. And making sure that I've moved all the way down to the bottom of the card. And then because I am working around the mask, making sure I'm getting nice and close to that mask as well. And we do want it to have some color. I think one more time here. I think that's pretty even. Close up the Pool Party. Take this mask off. I want a little bit of a space here between. I don't want it to be exactly. So I'm setting it here. I don't want a lot of space on the left side. I want a little bit more on the right side. So I'm just angling that up a little bit. Because that's because that's where the base of the trees are going to be. So every time you make this card, it's going to be a little bit different. And now we're going to use the Balmy blue ink. Sponge here. Just seasoning the Cobbler a little bit, but just like before, really taking off most of the color. Same process. And as I continue to do this, I'll probably speed the video up. There, I think that's good. I don't want a solid color. If I wanted a solid color, I could put it on with my sponge brayer. So it doesn't have to be perfectly even, because that gives it sort of a look of clouds. You never have a clear blue sky, not here in southern Vermont anyway. And I found it best to do the sponge daubing before I stamp the trees. And that's because I found that, again, maybe the ink wasn't quite dry when I stamped the trees the very first time I made the card. And because of that, it sort of colored the trees a little bit more than I wanted. It shaded them. Yeah, I think that looks good. So I already have the stamp from Lovely as a Tree mounted on the black. And because it's a larger stamp, I always stamp using the ink upside down onto the stamp. That way you don't get any lines if you're moving it around. Make sure it don't go off the top of the card, so I'm going to stand up. Hopefully I'm out of the picture. You stamp it once, and then again second generation. And as I moved that, I lowered it just a little bit. Second one here. And then my second generation will be over to the edge here. I think we're going to color the snowman next. Now, I'm using Stampin' Write markers. You could use Stampin' Blends as well, but most of this is pretty just fine work. And so I'm not using the brush end of the markers, I'm using the thinner end of the markers. And again, any colors, any markers that you have will work for this. And again, as I continue to color this, I will likely speed up the video. I also have out my pool party marker, and I have a soft sky marker, because when I did the coloring, the sponge daubing, and the way I sponged it, I didn't quite get into these in-between areas around these skates. I'm just filling that in a little bit there. The rest is good. And then one of the things that I did, just wanted to have some lines on the card to show the, sort of skating mark. So I just really did some swirling around. Just for a little, breaks up the solid ice, so to speak. Now I'm going to apply some Dazzling Diamonds. And I'm going to use some Tombow glue. I got a scrap of paper here. A little bit of glue on there. And I use an old paintbrush. I'm just painting a thin layer of glue on here. It'll be pretty quick with the process because it will dry. It's not very thick. The nice thing is that you do have a little bit of time with Tombow. And you can always go back and daub a little bit more on if you miss some pieces. Touch up just a little bit right here, right to the edge, and right here. And then parts around the bottom of the tree, I wanted a little bit of sparkle there too. Yeah, just a tad more right over here. There, I made a mess. Okay, just goes right back into the jar. The last thing we have to do is stamp the sentiment. Helps if you put the stamping side down. And for that, I'm also using the shaded spruce. I want it nice and dark. I'm just going to take another brush here. This isn't glued here. Just get it off. Doesn't need to be. Eventually it will all fall off and it will be everywhere all over my desk. Okay. Some tape runner on the back of that. Looks good. And mount that to the card base. Sorry, I had to get some of that glitter off my hand. So, here we go. I'll do a little bit more brushing around that arm there, darken it up if I have to. So here's the first card I made. Again, on this one, I put the brown in between. Decided I didn't like that as much. And then here's the second card that I made. And here's the one we made today. I hope you've enjoyed this video and will give this layout a try. As always, I'll have a full material list in the description box below my video, plus links to my Stampin' Up store, my stamping website, my blog, and my Pinterest page. Thanks for watching and have a great day.